What Men Live by Leo Tolstoy. Building background. The aristocrat and the peasants. During the 19th century, the peasants of Russia were poor and struggling. Russia was still a Christian nation then, and it was ruled by an emperor called the Tsar. Although the peasants were freed from serfdom, a form of slavery, during the 1800s, their standard of living remained far lower than that of wealthy landowners. Even though Leo Tolstoy was himself an aristocrat and a wealthy landowner, he became a leader in the fight to change society and educate the peasant class. Like the British authors Elizabeth Gaskell and Charles Dickens, Tolstoy often used his writing to call attention to social and moral issues, especially the plight of the poor. Toward the end of his writing career, he began writing down and adapting the folk tales through which peasants conveyed themes about the meaning of life. He believed that these themes revealed truths that could improve the quality of life for all. In What Men Live By, you will read about the 19th century Russian peasant and his encounter with a stranger in need. What Men Live by Leo Tolstoy. A shoemaker named Simon, who had neither house nor land of his own, lived with his wife and children in a peasant's hut and earned his living by his work. Work was cheap, but bread was dear, and what he earned he had spent on food. The man and his wife had but one sheepskin coat between them for the winter wear, and even that was worn to tatters, and this was the second year he had been wanting to buy sheepskins for a new coat. Before winter, Simon saved up a little money. A 3 ruble note lay hidden in his wife's box, and 5 rubles and 20 kopecks were owed him by customers in the village. So one morning he prepared to go to the village to buy the sheepskins. He put on over his shirt his wife's weighted nankeen jacket, and over that he put his own cloth coat. He took the 3 ruble note in his pocket, cut himself a stick to serve as a staff, and started off after breakfast. "I'll collect 5 rubles that are due to me," thought he. "Add the 3 I have got, and that will be enough to buy sheepskins for the winter coat." He came to the village and called at the peasant's hut, but the man was not home. The peasant's wife promised that the money should be paid next week, but she would not pay it herself. Then Simon called on another peasant, but this one swore he had no money and would only pay 20 kopecks, which he owed for a pair of boots Simon had mended. Simon then tried to buy the sheepskins on credit, but the dealer would not trust him. "Bring your money," said he, "then you may have your pick of the skin. We know what debt collecting is like." So all the business the shoemaker did was to get the 20 kopecks for boots he had mended, and to take a pair of felt boots a peasant gave him to sole with leather. Simon felt downhearted. He spent the 20 kopecks on vodka and started homewards without having bought any skins. In the morning he had felt the frost, but now after drinking the vodka he felt warm without a sheepskin coat. He trudged along, striking his stick on the frozen earth with one hand, swinging the felt boots with the other, and talking to himself. "I'm quite warm," said he, "though I have no sheepskin coat. I've had a drop, and it runs through my veins. I need no sheepskins. I go along and don't worry about anything. That's the sort of man I am. What do I care? I live without sheepskins. I don't need them. My wife will fret, to be sure, and true enough, it is a shame. One works all day long and then does not get paid. Stop a bit. If you don't bring that money along, sure enough I'll skin you. Blessed if I don't. How's that? He pays 20 kopecks at a time. What can I do with 20 kopecks? Drink it. That's all I can do. That's all one can do. Hard up, he says he is. So he may be, but what about me? You have a house, cattle, and everything. I only have what I stand up in. You have corn of your own growing. I have to buy every grain. Do what I will, I must spend 3 rubles every week for bread alone. I come home and find the bread all used up, and I have to go to work out another 1.5 rubles. So just you pay up what you owe and no nonsense about it. By this time he had nearly reached the shrine at the bend of the road. Looking up, he saw something whitish behind the shrine. The daylight was fading, and the shoemaker peered at the thing without being able to make out what it was. There was no white stone here before. Can it be an ox? It's not like an ox. It has a head like a man, but it's too white. And what could a man be doing there? He came closer, so that he was clearly visible. To his surprise, it really was a man, alive or dead, sitting naked, leaning motionless against the shrine. Terror seized the shoemaker, and he thought, "Someone has killed him, stripped him, and left him here. If I meddle, I shall surely get in trouble." So the shoemaker went on. He passed in front of the shrine, so he could not see the man. When he had gone some way, he looked back and saw the man was no longer leaning against the shrine, but was moving as if looking toward him. The shoemaker felt more frightened than before, and thought, "Shall I go back to him, or shall I go on? If I go near him, something dreadful may happen. But who knows who the fellow is? He has not come here for any good. If I go near him, he may jump up and throttle me, and there will be no getting away. Or if not, he's still a burden in one's hands. What could I do with a naked man? I couldn't give him my last clothes. Heaven only help me to get away." So the shoemaker hurried on, leaving the shrine behind, and suddenly his conscience smote him, and he stopped on the road. "What are you doing, Simon?" said he to himself. "The man may be dying of want, and you slip past afraid. Have you grown so rich as to be afraid of robbers? Ah, Simon, shame on you!" So he turned back and went up to the man. Simon approached the stranger, looked at him, and saw that he was a young man, fit, with no bruises on his body, but evidently freezing and frightened. He sat there leaning back without looking up at Simon, as if too faint to lift his eyes. Simon went close to him, and then the man seemed to wake up. Turning his head, he opened his eyes and looked into Simon's face. That one look was enough to make Simon fond of the man. He threw the felt boots on the ground, undid his sash, laid it on the boots, and took off his cloth coat. "It's not a time for talking," said he. "Come, put this coat on at once." And Simon took the man by the elbows and helped him to rise. As he stood there, Simon saw that his body was clean and in good condition. His hands and feet were shapely, and his face good and kind. He threw his coat over the man's shoulders, but later could not find the sleeves. Simon guided his arms into them, and drawing the coat on well, wrapped it closely around him, tying the sash around the man's waist. Simon even took off his cap to put it on the man's head. But then his own head felt cold, and he thought, "I'm quite bald, while he has long curly hair." So he put the cap on his own head again. "It will be better to give him something for his feet," thought he. And he made the man sit down and helped him to put on the felt boots, saying, "There, friend, now move about and warm yourself. Other matters can be settled later on. Can you walk?" The man stood up, looked kindly at Simon, but could not say a word. "Why don't you speak?" said Simon. "It's too cold to stay here. We must get going home. There now, take my stick, and if you're feeling weak, lean on that. Now, step out." The man started walking and moved easily, not lagging behind. As they went along, Simon asked him, "And where do you belong to?" "I'm not from these parts." "I thought as much. I know the folks hereabouts. But how did you come to be there by the shrine?" "I cannot tell." "Has someone been ill-treating you?" "No one has ill-treated me. God has punished me." "Of course God rules all. Still, you'll have to find food and shelter somewhere. Where do you want to go?" "It is all the same to me." Simon was amazed. The man didn't look like a rogue, and he spoke gently, but yet he gave no account of himself. Still Simon thought, "Who knows what may have happened?" And he said to the stranger, "Well then, come home with me and at least warm yourself for a while." So Simon walked toward his home, and the stranger kept up with him, walking at his side. And the wind had risen, and Simon felt it cold under his shirt, and he was getting over his tipsiness by now, and began to feel the frost. He went along sniffling and wrapping his wife's coat around him, and he thought to himself, "There now, talk about sheepskins! I went out for sheepskins and come home without even a coat on my back, and what is more, I'm bringing a naked man along with me. Matrina won't be pleased." And when he thought of his wife he felt sad, but he looked at the stranger and remembered how he had looked up at him at the shrine, and his heart was glad. Simon's wife had everything ready early that day. She cut wood, brought water, fed the children, eaten her own meal, and now she sat thinking. She wondered when she ought to make the bread, now or tomorrow. There was still a large piece left. If Simon has had some dinner in town, thought she, and does not eat much for supper, the bread will last out another day. She weighed the piece of bread in her hand again and again, and thought, "I won't make any more today. We have only enough flour left to bake one batch. We can manage to make this last out until Friday." So Matrina walked away the bread and sat down at the table to patch her husband's shirt. While she worked she thought about how her husband was buying skins for a winter coat. If only the dealer does not cheat him. My good man is much too simple. He cheats nobody. But any child can take him in. 8 rubles is a lot of money. He should get a good coat at that price. Not tan skins, but still a proper winter coat. How difficult it was last winter to get on without a winter coat. I could neither get down to the river nor go out anywhere. When he was out he put on all we had, and there was nothing left for me. He did not start very early today, but still it's time he was back. I only hope he's not gone on the spree." Hardly had Matrina thought this than steps were heard on the threshold, and someone entered. Matrina stuck her needle into her work and went out into the passage. There she saw 2 men, Simon, and with him a man without a hat and wearing felt boots. Matrina noticed at once that her husband smelt of spirits. "There now, he has been drinking," thought she, and when she saw that he was coatless, had only her jacket on, brought no parcel, stood there silent and seemed ashamed, her heart was ready to break with disappointment. "He has drunk the money," thought she, "and has been on the spree with some good-for-nothing fellow who he has brought home with him." Matrina let them pass into the hut, followed them in, and saw that the stranger was a young, slight man wearing her husband's coat. There was no shirt to be seen under it, and he had no hat. Having entered, he stood neither moving nor raising his eyes, and Matrina thought, "He must be a bad man. He's afraid."